But in general we find that from amongst the attacks of those people who show some hatred towards al-Islam, that there is various methods to destroy al-Islam. From amongst those methods, from this ideological attack upon the Muslims, is the destruction of the youth. That if you want to destroy a nation and destroy a people, then corrupt their youth. And likewise the opposite serves true as well, that if you want to create a nation and if you want to conquer a people and you want to progress, then work on the youth, develop the youth. And we find that this system, the sunnah al-kawniyah, or the sunnah of creation, has been placed inside the Quran as well. That some of the greatest people or the greatest achievements were made by the youth. In particular, Ashabul Kahf, who were sleeping in the cave, or the sleepers in the cave, they were all young men. Fityatun amanu bi rabbihim, young boys, young men who believed in their Lord. And they stood truth to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and were firmly established and responded to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the end became victorious. We find many of the companions radiyallahu anhum ajma'in being the young companions who were always at the forefront in striving for al-Islam. So we find that the youth are always a dynamic characteristic of any ummah, of any people, to become successful, because the zeal and the courage that they have is something which many people, or people of different age, do not have. Meaning that when you reach a certain age in your life, you don't have that enticement to do the things that a young person would do, to even sacrifice their life for the sake of al-Islam or for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sometimes the elderly people are highly respected in society, but there is no more that they can offer to society to change society and to help society. So the youth are very, very paramount in our society. And we find that a German Orientalist, he wrote once as well, it would be a great help if we could push the Quran inside and bring the women outside. Meaning a way to stop al-Islam from expanding is to push the Quran within the household, keep it within the rules and the ahkam and the injunctions mentioned inside the Quran, keep it within the home, keep it within the masjid. Don't bring the ruling system of the Quran or the ruling system of al-Islam out in the open, and bring the women outside. Make them become more liberal, make them come out and work, make them expose themselves, and this will be a way to counteract al-Islam. And this picture that he has painted is probably true, that today we find more and more people, especially even amongst the Muslims themselves, that in their freedom of expression and belief and to live in this society, they feel that there is freedom is exposed to them and they should be allowed to be as free as they want. And this is something very dangerous, that if we do not preserve our identity, we do not preserve our belief, we do not preserve our iman, then there will be only destruction and degradation for these people. And we find that the women, they are the backbone of society. As we find the famous statement, behind every great man is a great woman. Behind the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Khadija radiyallahu anha. Then after her death, Aisha radiyallahu anha. Behind Musa alayhi salam was his mother, and then Asiya. Behind Isa alayhi salam was Maryam alayhi salam. So we find that the majority of us, beginning with the prophets to the majority of mankind, there's always a mother who is encouraging one to go out and learn. Even if you read the seerah of many of the ai like Imam Ahmad, you find that it was the mother that inspired him to go and learn. And if I'm not mistaken, Imam Shafi'i as well. So here you find the encouragement given by the mother to go and learn. So the mother is the first source of knowledge, that if she is well equipped in the fundamentals of al-Islam, in the recitation of the Quran, then she can teach this to the child or to the children. As we find that many people, they write, hiya awwalul madrasa, that the first madrasa, the first school for a child is the mother. That is the first teacher that the child is exposed to. And so we find these are some of the problems that we find in our society at the moment, which is clearly evident that within the walls of the masjid, people are very heedless of what is happening outside of their society. It is a sad fact to mention that gun crime, drugs, the selling of drugs, prostitution, robbery, all these types of activities has a heavy involvement of the Muslim youth in this area. Because many of us live maybe in an academic atmosphere, we haven't walked upon the streets. As Umar would mention, that none of you can really appreciate al-Islam until you have lived a life of jahiliyyah, a life of ignorance, to know what is happening in society. That is a real person who understands the beauty of al-Islam and sees the ignorance of ignorance. And so we find that if we look outside our doorstep, the amount of people involved in such crimes are Muslims. And even statistically, it was proven many years ago. For example, the Daily Mail or the Daily Express, they conducted a survey to say that the most well-behaved people in this society are the Muslims. That no longer stands true. The most worst behaved people in society are the Muslims. And the official statistics of the prison has been noted that the greatest denomination of people on the increase who are going into prison is not the Hindus, is not the Sikhs, is not the other non-Muslims, but the greatest rise in percentage of inmates in this country, in Her Majesty's prisons, is the Muslims. These are facts collected by them. An increase of so many youth going into prison, and many of these youth come from an Arab background, and some of them come from the subcontinent background. They are illiterate regarding their religion. Even to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, they don't know how to recite it. They don't know the basic tenets of their belief. So once again, it goes back to what are we doing for our society? What are we doing for our youth?